Welcome to the Ricky Mathews Show, where we celebrate every single day the people who are working to make Mississippi such a great place to live, work, and play. Hey, I was going through my history book this morning, and I came across a quote from Gloria Gaynor. She's the one who wrote and sung "I Will Survive." She was actually born back in 1943. But the quote that they shared from her got me thinking, and here's the quote. "Self-esteem comes from what you think of you, not what other people think of you." Let me say it again. Self-esteem comes from what you think of you, not what other people think of you. That was Gloria Gaynor. I've been thinking all week long about this young girl, 13 years old, in Ocean Springs, Aubrey Wyatt, who killed herself over the weekend. I just can't get her out of my head. And as I'll mention at the beginning of the next segment with my friend Paige Roberts, when I look at her picture, I just see hope and promise. And I talk on this show all the time that you never know what someone is going through. You never know. And the issues around suicide are complex. And as Paige will talk about in the next segment, oftentimes people are committing suicide are not wanting to kill themselves. They're just wanting to get away from the pain. And so we don't really know what was going on in poor Aubrey's life. But what we do know is that we all play a role in building up the people who are around us, whether they're our friends, our family, our acquaintances. I was touched by something that Sandy Ann Seymour Nikkes posted on Facebook. It was a quote from Jeffrey Benjamin, and it said this: you will never reach higher ground if you are always pushing others down. And boy, is that true. I mean, the work we all have to do is to always understand that we never know what someone else is going through. They may seem like it's all together and may be tortured on the inside, or they may be falling apart and just need that one thing to be the straw that broke the camel's back. Don't let that person be you, and don't let that person be your kids or your grandkids or your friends or anyone around you. I think what Jeffrey Benjamin said is true. You will never reach higher ground if you're always pushing others down. We'll be talking more about that in the second segment of today's show with my friend Paige Roberts, who's been doing a lot of work in this area, incidentally, as it relates to teen suicide. Okay, now, sorry to start on a somber note, but we'll shift gears rapidly because there's a lot to look forward to as we think about the New Orleans Saints this year. And I'm pleased to have my friend Jeff Duncan with me as we contemplate. Boy, the season's already here, Jeff.
Yeah, week one begins this week, and Sunday we open the season at the Superdome. A lot of excitement, and I think everyone's ready just to see what the 2023 Saints have in store.
Hey, listen, I always make sure to point this out. Jeff doesn't require me to do this, but I just do it because it's the best testament I can give to this team at NOLA.com and the Times-Picayune and their coverage of the Saints. But you got to sign up for the Saints newsletter. They're doing an incredible job of capturing the important points of what this team is all about. Most recently, we don't want to spend too much time on this, but Jake Hayner's suspension, what a disappointment that is. I mean, it just means that the front office has got to do some gyrations and think about stuff they shouldn't have had to think about with the start of the season. It's not a killer for the Saints, but it's still an unnecessary sideshow.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's not going to affect them on the field. Jake Hayner wasn't going to play this season. He was probably the number 4 quarterback on the roster. So it won't affect their game preparation, but what it will affect is them having to probably bring in another young quarterback and put him on the practice squad to run the scout team, which is what Jake Hayner was going to do. And it's certainly disappointing for the rookie. He loses 8 game checks out of, 6 game checks out of an 18-game season. So a third of his season, he loses payroll. I mean, that's a lot when you're making rookie minimum salary, even though it's still good money. And look, I'm sure it's something that he was unaware of being a rookie, but there really aren't any excuses. I mean, if you know how the NFL deals with these things, I mean, they educate the players up and down. So do the teams. If you have any question about something you're putting in your body, you just don't do it. And they really have no margin for error there. I can't see him appealing and winning an appeal.
Yeah, it's super disappointing. We have, they'll have to, going into the season with Alvin Kamara's, three-game suspension, and then some other injuries. They're going to have to get creative at running back. But you're not really concerned about that, are you?
Well, look, they've had time to prepare and plan. I think that's the big thing. It's not like this is an injury that happened in the season. You got a few days to get ready for an opponent. The Saints have known this all offseason. That's why they signed Jamal Williams. Now, they are depth shy. There's no doubt about it. I mean, Kendre Miller, the rookie who they drafted in the third round, is probably not going to play. I would say he's not going to play. He didn't practice on Wednesday. That's a bad sign. So I would say, what you're going to see is Jamal Williams and Tony Jones Jr., who just was signed like a week ago, has been on the team before, is familiar with the offense. But what I really think in regard to your question or, your comment about creativity, I think you're going to see a lot of like Taysom Hill in the running game. We've seen him in the past. We'll see him probably at quarterback, in the RPO game and short yardage. And they're going to lean heavily on the playmakers they have. The strength of this team without Alvin Kamara is going to be Derek Carr at quarterback and the passing attack. So you're probably going to see a lot of short passing game, maybe some jet sweeps to Rashid Shaheed, just some different things to gain yards on the ground because they've got to stay balanced. And Jamal Williams is a good, solid running back, but he's not Alvin Kamara. He's going to pound out and get the 3- and 4-yard gains. Alvin Kamara turns a 4-yard gain into a 14-yard gain. That's what makes him special. And they don't really have that without Kamara. So in the interim, I think you'll see this offense tweaked a little bit to the personnel involved.
Let's see, we're going into this season with a lot of expectations in the passing game. I'm seeing, people starting to pay closer attention for a long time. The Saints were not on anyone's radar screen, but now you're starting to hear people talk about them now. Of course, none of that talk really matters at the end of the day, does it?
No, I mean, look, the LSU Tigers found that out this week, right? I mean, they were built up all offseason, then the reality hits when you have to play against an opponent. And so we're going to find out. I mean, there's a lot of optimism, a lot of enthusiasm. If you're out at Saints camp, and you talk to the players and coaches, and I've talked about this with you before, I mean, they are convinced, Ricky, that they're going to be good this year. I mean, I'm not saying like every team thinks they're going to be good, but they think they're going to do something special. I mean, they really believe that. And I've been around this game a lot. I've covered a lot of teams. I know, general August optimism, September optimism. I've seen it a million times. This is different. I mean, they think they're going to surprise a lot of people. They think they're sitting on something big. Now, we're going to find out. They're either going to be really right and everyone around the country is going to be wrong, or they're going to be really wrong. I don't think there's any in between there, how this team plays.
What's interesting, and you can comment about this, but I heard a great conversation with someone. I don't even remember who it was. Oh, I tell you who it was. It was a Saints player. But anyway, it'll come back to me in a second. But he was talking about how there's a lot of parity in the league today. There are a lot of high performing athletes, and on any given day, any team can win. And the team that can make the plays and perform at that high level. And you never know where that one player is going to come from or where that one play is going to come from that can really make the difference in the game. And what he was pointing out is the Saints have been super close to that point where we're just a couple of plays. Like, for example, if we didn't miss 2 or 3 field goals last year, it probably changes the complexion of the whole situation, even with the quarterback situation being what it was. But, man, it doesn't take a lot to take you over that wall that makes you more successful than most other teams. And hopefully the Saints can use these pieces, these playmakers, and spread the ball out and create opportunities for them to do it. They've been really focused a lot this year on creating plays, not just having the offense and defense play.
Yeah, look, the reason the NFL is so successful, Ricky, is exactly what you're referring to. The parity in the league, the fact that from one year to the next, you always have hope. That happens every year. A team that finishes last in the division wins the division the next year. Happens every year. So there's always hope for that. And the really consistent, successful teams, organizations like the Patriots, the Steelers, we can go down the list, And what the Saints have been, especially in the Peyton Breeze era, they find ways to consistently win those games. And teams that can't win, they fall into the trap of mediocrity. And that's what the Saints have always been on, until Peyton and Breeze got there. So I think that's the question. That's my column is this is a tipping point season. Which way they go, the trajectory of the organization, I think, can be defined largely by how they fare this season.
I remember who the conversation with. It was Cam Jordan. And when we get on the other side, part of the conversation was really about longevity. And I mean, it was, first of all, he's a smart guy. He's a really smart guy that has been so consistent in how he approaches his health and the game. And it was a fascinating conversation. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation with Jeff Duncan. Welcome back to the Ricky Mathews Show. I have my friend Jeff Duncan from NOLA.com and the Times-Picayune, and we're talking Saints like we do every single Friday. But it was, Cam Jordan, what an articulate dude. And when you hear him talk about where he is physically and where he is in his mind, he really thinks he can play a couple more years at a high level. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, look, that's the plan. The Saints signed him to an extension before the year. And, I know they want him to retire a Saint as he should. So we'll see. I think this is a big year for him. We'll find out. I mean, it was an interesting year he had a year ago, mid-season or so. He didn't have any sacks. His numbers were going to his locker, asking him, and then he ends up leading the team in sacks again. But Father Time is undefeated, Ricky, so we're going to find out. I mean, he's had an amazing career, amazing durability, great leadership in that locker room because of the way he carries himself. I mean, he never misses a practice, hardly ever misses a rep in practice. It's astounding, especially at the position he plays where you're engaging in contact every play. So he's been I think he'll probably be a Hall of Fame candidate. I know he will be. It'll be interesting to see once he does retire, what his legacy is.
Well, we've Peyton Turner's coming along. We've drafted some what could be really excellent defensive linemen. As you pointed out, we needed to make some changes at the defensive line. It remains to be seen if we made the right calls on all that. But the reality is, if the defensive line plays well, that should actually help Jordan's game, shouldn't it?
Yeah. I think that's what I'm going to be watching on Sunday with a keen focus is who steps up between Carl Granderson. Is it rookie Brian Brzee? Is it one of these young guys you mentioned, Peyton Turner, Isaiah Foskey, who they drafted in the second round? I mean, we've got a lot of candidates, a lot of potential there. We just have to see it manifest itself into production on game days. But I think it's important that they have someone else become the alpha there on the defensive line. I think Marcus Davenport was the guy they were grooming to be that, and he never quite could take the mantle and become that guy. And I think they have hopes that Carl Granderson's ready to take that step, but they've got to get it. I mean, their front seven is going to get tested big time on Sunday, especially in the running game. Tyrann Mathieu, I was talking to him this week, and he said, Derrick Henry's one of these guys, pounds you for 2 yards, 3 yards, 1 yard, and all of a sudden 65 yards. You got to bring it every play against him. He's such a force. And they haven't faced Derrick Henry. The last 2 times they played the Titans, he's been out. They were fortunate. But they're going to get tested in the front seven with him and the young rookie from Tulane, Tyjae Spears.
Hey, the other thing that's interesting about Tennessee, again, you've got an offensive line, if I recall this correctly, one player coming back playing in a different position, so all the players are playing in new roles on the offensive line, and then you got a new defensive line. So there's a lot of unknown matching up between the defensive line and the offensive line of Tennessee. That's probably the reason you're going to be paying attention to it. Yeah,
I know. Look, Mike Vrabel and his staff, they're highly regarded. They're one of the shrewdest coaching staffs in the league. I have no doubt they're going to be better along the offensive line than they were a year ago. They brought in DeAndre Hopkins, a star receiver to help them on the perimeter. But their focus is going to be running the ball. That's their bread and butter. They're going to be physical. Dennis Allen all week has told his team, you talk to the players, all week it's who wins the line of scrimmage is going to win this game. And so the Saints pride themselves on their physicality, but so do the Titans. So whoever wins that battle, I think, is going to go a long way to winning this game.
Hey, with Hopkins out there, you've seen Marshawn Lattimore being somewhat limited in practice. You feel like he's going to go 100%?
Yeah, he's fine. They're just nursing him to get him ready for the opener. He looks fine. Guys like Marshawn Lattimore. I mean, this week Jimmy Graham was out of practice. Ryan Ramczyk missed a day of practice. They're just getting them ready. They don't need to practice really. They're just taking it easy, getting ready for the opener.
So as you said it just then, you're going to be watching both the offensive line and especially defensive line. But if you had to say there's a storyline from Jeff Duncan going into this game, what is it?
Well, I've got a couple, Ricky. I mean, I want to see obviously how Derek Carr performs with these great expectations on him and how this offense performs against a very solid Tennessee defense. This isn't a dominant defense they're facing, but it's a good one and one that very rarely gives up a lot of big explosive plays. They make you earn everything. So how are they going to perform in the passing attack that's been so pedestrian the last few years? Now they've got, emerging young stars and Chris Olave and Jawan Johnson, Rashid Shaheed. You got Mike Thomas coming back. He's healthy. And then you got Derek Carr plugged into that mix. What are we going to see here? This is something that we've written about all offseason. How's the offense going to change with Carr? So I'm going to be watching that intently. And then the other thing I think that needs to happen this year, and my column Sunday is going to reflect it, is they need to get the Superdome back to what it was, that hostile environment where, it becomes difficult for the opponent to win a game here. They were 4-4 there last year. They need to get that back to being the 12th man home field advantage. And that comes with success, but it also comes with the fan base kind of getting energized. And I think they are this offseason.
Hey, listen, Jeff, when you think about the work this team has done to get guys out into the perimeter, to bring back the screen pass. I remember sitting with my son Jordan during games last year and going, why don't they throw the screen pass anymore? When they did, they were fairly good at it, and before they were great at it. I mean, they've really worked hard on that this year, haven't they?
Yeah. And look, Alvin Kamara is one of the best at it, but it's very coordinated play. It takes the offensive line. You have to have the athleticism in the offensive line. And so a lot of times when they're not running it's because they don't have the confidence that they have the athleticism at the guard position or the tackle position to get out and be successful. So there's an art to that play. I mean, Pierre Thomas was brilliant at it, probably the best I've ever seen. Kamara is really good at it. I don't know how good Jamal Williams is. We're going to find out. But, that's the kind of thing that certainly helps deaden a pass rush and take some of the juice out of an opponent's pass rush. It's certainly an effective weapon the Saints have had in the past. And I think, like we talked about earlier, I think you're going to see some jet sweeps and things like that we haven't seen in this offense a lot of. But it's just going to be a way to manufacture yards on the ground, get on the perimeter. I think they're going to try and get this team to move horizontally and try and wear them out maybe by the fourth quarter, getting them to run sideline to sideline with some of that speed.
And then, of course, you got, everyone knows of Jamal Williams that he's, if you want to run him right through the gut, you can do that. And he's just a hard runner. But it will be interesting, man. And I suspect that Taysom Hill is going to play heavily into this game plan. Yeah,
big time. There's no doubt about it. I mean, I think they'll go to that quarterback power play and short yardage. It's been very successful in the past. And look, Tennessee knows that. I mean, it's going to be fun to watch. And then another storyline that we haven't talked about, but one certainly I think everyone's going to be watching, is the new specialist. I mean, you got two rookie undrafted free agents at kicker and punter. How are they going to fare when the bright lights come on? What if this game comes down to a game-winning field goal, which it very well might? How's Blake Grupe going to respond? He told us the other day he hasn't kicked a game-winning field goal since I think his sophomore year at Arkansas State. So, he hasn't had a lot of experience. He didn't kick one at Notre Dame, wasn't in that position. How's he going to respond, in a game like this after all the expectations?
Well, according to everything I read, and certainly every interview I've seen with him, he has ice in his veins.
Yes.
Hopefully that stays that way, and it will serve him well in those situations. But as you said so many times, man, you never know. You literally never know till someone's in the moment, and then you find out, don't you?
Right. I can remember the best example of that was always Jake Delhomme when he was the backup quarterback here, competing for the starting job with Aaron Brooks. he was just a terrible practice player. I mean, just terrible. That's why he never earned the starting job here. He never performed in practice. He was just a gamer. And so when he would, I've heard so many stories where they'd run this one play over and over in practice, and he'd throw it in the stands and throw it in the ground, and then they'd run it in the game, and he'd throw it perfectly. Certain guys respond that way, and certain guys go the other way. So it's you never know until you get out there in that. And I saw it even. I know this is going to sound crazy, but even covering like Katrina, as a news reporter here in New Orleans, when you have pressure like that and people are in unfamiliar situations, certain people rise to the occasion, certain people kind of curl up in the fetal position, and you don't know who it's going to be. It doesn't matter to their title or how much money they're making. It's all about how you're wired, and I think that certainly applies to NFL football.
Well, look, I wrote an unpublished book after Katrina where I had one of the lessons in there was literally what you were talking about, that type A people tended to bring a lot of attention on themselves. The type B people were over here, and you didn't really know who they were. When Katrina hit, some of that type A people came through, but then a bunch of them didn't. A bunch of them, you just literally didn't see them for a year. And over here, the type Bs that really never brought any attention to them, a bunch of them came out and performed in ways you never would have expected. So what I came to understand is that we're too quick to judge people on first impression. At the end of the day, when the going gets tough, that's when you really find out who someone is. And we certainly learned that after Katrina, didn't we, my friend?
100%. I've never forgotten those lessons learned. And you're exactly right. You never know how somebody's wired until they get in a high pressure environment. I'm sure it's like that in military situations. And I certainly learned it after Katrina.
Well, listen, Jeff, we are very fortunate to have you to check in with weekly. Thank you for making yourself available to us weekly. We really appreciate it.
Look forward to talking to you next week, hopefully after a Saints big win in week 1.
Oh, man, I hope so. We need a great year. That would be so much fun. Anyway, have a great day. When we come back, we'll have Paige Roberts from the Jackson County Chamber. We'll see you after this.